on blast.
We are back with more of the Challenge OGs. I'm John Chidley Hill.
And I am Sheldon Alexander. I made it to episode 2.
I think we're reeling you in. This is You Killed It, the podcast about the challenge. I don't know if you caught this, but every episode is named after a 90s like big tune.
I did not know this.
So episode 1 is Legends Never Die. This episode is All That You Can't Leave Behind. And it continues like that. So okay. I quite like that. That gets me. Do you know what else gets me, Sheldon?
Trishelle.
Trishelle does get me a little.
Okay.
We'll talk a lot about her this episode. But Feel Me Flow by Naughty by Nature is such a fucking jam. And this episode opens with it as they're all like hanging out and like playing pool. I love this song
Makes me think of like a summertime barbecue, everyone just hanging out, having a good time.
Exactly. Yeah. You mentioned last episode of You Killed It, how we miss parties. I miss parties so much. And this song reminds me of parties, or just hanging out. Like, not to talk about the unpleasantness. But man, we're gonna get back there, Sheldon.
I had posted yesterday on social media. I was like, the Kawhi shot had me in my feelings. I was watching it and like sports was awesome. And the Raptors won a crazy game 7 and Kawhi hit a shot and you're seeing all these people happy and everyone's together. And when are we going to do that again?
I also get
out of my feelings.
I also get anxious seeing group shots now though. I think about the 2 million people that got into downtown Toronto to celebrate the NBA championship. And I'm just like, ugh. So it's going to take me a while to get there. But like with nearest and dearest, they'll be okay. So you mentioned Trishelle.
Yeah, Trishelle and Katie, right? And so here's one thing that kind of threw me off, because the trailer from the end of episode 1, we saw Katie yelling at Trishelle to get over something from 15 years ago. And then we see them talking at the beginning of episode 2. And right away, I'm like, okay, you just gave away exactly what's going to happen in this episode, right? Like right away, I was like, okay, I see exactly where this is going. And again, if this is Challenge All-Stars for the Challenge OGs, this is also for the OG viewers. And I can't be the only one that right away was like, okay, come on, guys. Like, we know exactly what's going to happen here, because the meeting between Katie and Trishelle, they're talking and they're being so nice to each other. Trishelle's talking about how they were friends. They were roommates. They've known each other forever. They were in each other's weddings. All of this build up. And I'm like, all right, so we know what's going to happen, right? Did you feel the same vibes that I did?
Oh, yeah. I mean, just look at the 2 combustible elements we're talking about here. I mean, Trishelle and Katie, it turns out, were roommates for 6 years. They were bridesmaids for each other's weddings. But they're both very combustible people. Like the last time we saw Trishelle, she was leaving Rivals 2 after making some very racially insensitive comments to Anissa, which we will circle back to. But like I can't imagine what it was like the 2 of them living together. Like they must have had epic fights over like who did the dishes all the time. Like and to like just have them like reunite, and we'll talk about it more, but to have them reunite and like sure they're friends, but they haven't seen each other in a while, like man, like the inevitable is gonna happen when you have those 2. And like I like Katie more than I like Trishelle, but just like knowing their personalities. Oh, buddy. Yeah. We also, so like, I'm not super familiar with Kendall.
No. I will say though, the flashback to Kendall, because there's a point where we get the introduction of Darrell and Kendall, like Darrell saying, oh yeah, he's known her forever because they were on the same season of Road Rules, was it? Yeah.
Yep.
And
with
so
Shane.
You got the flashback and like young Darrell with the braid up. I was like, oh, okay. I like totally just forgot. And there's like the quick shot of Darrell like dancing with Kendall. And I was like, oh, okay. Okay. I see what's going on here. And the funny thing was, because Kendall, I don't really remember Kendall, but it was funny
No.
because I think it was Ace in episode 1 that was like, he was talking to Kendall where he was like, hold on, how old are you? And then you get the reasoning for it the next episode where you're like, oh, then you get Derek being like, wait, you're doing yoga for the how many times today are you doing yoga?
Yeah.
And she's like, oh,
Did you
this is
try
my
to set a
third
world
time.
record?
Yeah. And so you see what's going on here. Kendall's got the like hot mom vibes going, getting her yoga on, but she's also trying to figure out what she's doing on the show. Like, why did she come to do this show?
I have
Which
to
kind
say,
of gave me a good curveball away from the, oh, Trishelle's going home. It was like, oh, well, maybe Kendall's going to go home. Do you know what I mean? It was a good job. It was a good pump fake by the producers. It was good. It was good.
as soon as she said to Derek, she's like, "Yeah, I'm not here for the money. I'm not sure why I'm here." I was like, "Kendall, what are you doing? You just asked Derek to send you home. Like, do you not see?" And
Right.
like, I think this is going to be an interesting dynamic. So that there's going to be people like Darrell and Anissa and Derek and Jemmy who are a little more used to how things are now.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's going to be like the Kendalls of the world who are like, oh yeah, we're just like having fun.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like, I don't know that you would necessarily describe the challenge as fun if you're a regular competitor anymore, right? And we
Yeah.
saw a little bit of that at the end of the last episode where Darrell is like, welcome to the challenge, everyone, after Latarian dummy days. Darrell was like, yeah, this is what it's like now, guys. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
wait until you do hall brawl. Like,
Right.
so
Craziness.
I really felt like Kendall was a bit of a lamb to slaughter. And like, I do love Derek. I think he seems like a really nice, solid dude. You and I always speak about like, who would we have drinks with?
Mm-hmm.
And like, I think Derek would be fun. But also,
Okay.
if I were her, I wouldn't be floating that information up to anyone that walks up to me. Like that seems imprudent.
No, that's fair. That's fair. But in terms of an interesting conversation, right? We got
Hmm.
Trishelle and Anissa. And as I said, right, I think Trishelle's done because we're getting a lot of Trishelle early in this episode. But they flash back to her fight with Anissa, which at first I didn't realize was in 2012. I had to do a pause and be like, whoa, it was that long ago? Like it didn't feel that long ago to me, but I guess it was. And the argument at the time, it was kind of, the normal people are just hanging out late at night. Some people have drank a little too much. And her and Anissa got into an argument. And she basically said, and I'm paraphrasing, but she basically said to Anissa, like, what are you anyways? Are you black? Are you white? Are you Jewish? Like, and obviously Anissa starts yelling. People start breaking it up. Trishelle ends up going home the next day. And considering everything that's gone on in the world, then considering everything that's gone on in the challenge just last summer, what did you make of them making this part of the storyline in terms of obviously D? If we go back to last summer, D was then removed from every single like scene for the rest of the season that she was currently on, that was currently airing because of something that she said online. And in this instance, they're re-airing something that Trishelle said that was inappropriate, but this after bringing her back onto a show. Do you
Yeah,
think that this is contradictory? Like are they contradicting themselves here? Is it kind of them being hypocritical? What did you make of this whole scene?
I think a lot depends on what happened in the background. I think a lot. I think a lot depends on if the producers went to Anissa and were like, "Hey, we were thinking of having Trishelle come back on.
Mhm.
How would you feel about that?" I think a lot depends on if they said to Trishelle, like, hey, we'd love to have you back. You're good TV, like you're sort of an icon, but you're gonna
Right.
have to apologize to Anissa.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, we don't know what happened.
And I
I'm
can bet you
not.
something along those lines happened where it's like, okay, we're gonna have you back because again, in as you were saying, as we discussed, I think in episode 1, in them promoting this show, you need names. You need some names that people
And
will
Trishelle's a name.
remember for sure. Trishell is one of the most popular names in terms of people to come out of this real world challenge franchise. So to bring her back is a thing. Like it makes sense, dollars and cents. But also to do that, though, you have to address this. You couldn't have brought her back and not address this. So I think Anissa had to be on board, for lack of a better term. And I'll say this. I like how they handled it because, you know, we talked about it even with the D thing, right? Like I understand why they removed her. Like it was the gesture that they could do at the time to quote unquote punish her, right? For what she did in real time, right? Like I get that. Now they said, I think did they say that D's banned forever? I don't remember that.
They didn't say, but I assume she is. It seems like Camilla is also banned forever. Like,
right. So
those would be the equivalent people.
So I understand that, you know, like I always keep trying to tell myself not to be so black and white in terms of, and I'm not making the pun, I'm saying not so this or that, like there's middle ground and everything, right? So I understand that in saying, hey, we're not having this person on because we don't stand for that. But I also understand that if you have the ability to bring two people together, have them address it, have them have a conversation, I also see the value in that. Allow that, you know, like people are allowed to fuck up, especially in 2012, and us to understand that in 9 years, right? You can change, you can adjust, you can learn from your mistake, you can get better, and you can, you know, say, hey, I fucked up in the past. That was terrible. I shouldn't have done that. I felt horrible about it. I'm sorry. I'm truly, genuinely sorry. And we can move on. I'm okay with that personally.
Yeah, I'm okay with it, and I think that something we've lost as a society is nuance and understanding that people grow and change, and maybe they were in a bad place at that time in their life. That doesn't excuse what Trishelle said back in 2012 at all, but like, you know, context does matter, and ownership and accountability matters.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, what's most important is Anissa seemed content with this, and like she's the injured party. I do hope that the producers like cleared Trishelle's casting with Anissa first, because like I think Anissa's comfortability is the most important thing. But she seemed good with it and quite accepting and cool with the apology. But Anissa's also great, so.
Yeah, I think definitely when they were plotting this all out and Trishelle coming back, this scene was a scene that they probably had mapped out that had to be involved early. The other thing I was going to say though, because the importance of, and I don't want to spend too long on this, but I do want to say though, you brought up nuance and how important nuance is when discussing these things, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that the ability to have the discussion and acknowledge the context and, you know, Trishelle was saying that drunk and angry and trying to be malicious, right?
Yeah.
But what she was actually saying, if you break down what she was saying, you could tell that it's from a lack of knowledge. Mm-hmm. It's not understanding, right? Like she's coming from a place of, wait, I don't really understand how people do identify if you are someone who is black and Jewish and white. And like, do you know what I'm saying? Like she was saying it in a malicious way, which is terrible and horrible. But I think we also got to value and use teachable moments.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just wanted to say that. And, you know, there's a difference there. Like, I think, you know, instead of just like crushing someone all the time and cancel culture, and I'm mad I even use that word because I feel like that's such a like easy hot button thing to say and do in 2021 and get mad at. And I don't mean it for that, but I'm saying instead of just like banishing someone and being like, screw you, sometimes we can use a teachable moment that even if it's not for that person, it could be for someone else watching.
Yeah. We also don't know, again, I'm not excusing Trishelle's behavior in 2012.
No, nobody
But
is.
we don't know how her relationship with alcohol has changed since then. We don't know if she and Anissa have had conversations since then. Like we don't know what work Trishelle has done on herself since then.
No idea.
And like I said, the most important thing is Anissa seemed good with the apology.
Totally true.
She's the most affected party, so that's good.
And you said Anissa felt good about that. Anissa also felt good about the next daily challenge as well, which I'm going to be honest, I didn't feel good about this challenge. What? I didn't really like it.
What?
So
I loved it.
I like trivia, right? I think trivia is normally cool. But again, I felt like this episode was more of a history lesson for viewers. It was kind of like going through this challenge scrapbook and being like, hey, remember when this person did this? It's kind of like going through the challenge moments, greatest hits, like introduction to these people and to the show, more so than an actual daily competition. And I don't know how much I enjoyed this daily competition because, you know, I like seeing them not knowing geography or simple math or simple history, as opposed to, you know, what season did Johnny Bananas get carried as a backpack? Like, what? Like, I don't know. I didn't find it interesting, but clearly you disagree. So let me know what you enjoyed about it.
So what I enjoyed about it was I just thought it was funny.
Okay.
Like it was, first of all, there's no one more joyous on this earth than TJ Lavin doing trivia and getting to send people tumbling into water. Agreed. And like that fills my heart. It was also just funny seeing like how out of their element they all were, because like Trishelle actually says she was asked a question about Johnny Bananas. I think it was, when did Johnny Bananas debut? And he goes, and she goes, I don't watch Johnny Bananas. I don't give a fuck about Johnny Bananas. Just like what everyone was saying was so good. My line of the episode, there's a few good lines of this. Katie had a good one where she got asked a question, you know, like, who said this? It turned out that the answer was Anissa. But Katie goes, I can't remember what Jemmy said 6 minutes ago. How can I remember what Anissa said 15 years ago?
I like that. I did like the flashbacks. My favorite flashback, and I think my favorite line, even though it's not from this episode, but it was Coral. I don't wrestle, I beat bitches up. It's like, put that on a t-shirt.
It's so funny when you
Coral,
compare it to like contemporary challenge castmates like Josh. Imagine if someone said that to Josh. Wow. Like he would say this is like an unsafe workplace and ask for like counseling and be immediately taken to a safe location. My line of the episode though is TJ asks Katie how many people would compete in an elimination on the island, and she goes, I don't know, one. And TJ goes, oh my god, Katie, how could one person participate in an elimination? And she's like, I don't know. And he's like, take a step forward. I had to pause the feed because I was laughing so hard. Like I surfed. It was so good.
Yeah, that was really good. But the thing that was really bad was, what was Kendall doing? I didn't understand it.
I was confused at first, but then she just didn't want to fall into the water.
But that shouldn't even be allowed.
Well, and TJ sort of said as much, but then just like moved on.
Like she should have been automatically disqualified and sent to the elimination instead of Trishelle.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
That's what should have happened. Now we know what's going to happen, but we'll talk. The other thing I wanted to bring up though was, Nehemiah won, right? He won for Nehemiah the guys. Won among the men. And then for the women, it came down to Anissa and Ruthie. And it kept going back and forth for a while where they were just getting everything right.
I
And they
wondered if
didn't
they were
show,
going to run out of questions.
right? They didn't show the questions, but they didn't show the questions for everything. They just ran a montage of answers at a certain point. And so I didn't see the question, but I did notice one of the answers were Trinidad and Tobago. And I was like, oh, I wonder what that question was. Right? I just wanted to give a shout out to TNT, and it made me think of Caravana, which, yeah.
Don't get in your feels, Shelly.
Right?
We'll
I'm trying not to. No, we'll keep things going. We'll keep things going. So, yes, Anissa ends up winning.
I thought it was funny that Anissa won because, like, it's less of a memory game for her. Like, she lived it. Like,
exactly. It's
right?
so
Like,
true.
it's not like at one point Kellyanne was like, I didn't have cable growing up, so like I didn't watch all of this. But like Anissa lived it. Like she's never stopped being on the show, basically.
Right? She was there. She was there. So then we get this weird conversation with Trishelle and her crew, which they're trying to let her pick who she wants to go against. But eventually she's just like, whatever, you guys decide. And I'm like, what is going on here? Like this, like that's an interesting strategy, but okay. So then we get to the nomination ceremony and people are asking Kendall what happened. And she had I don't even know how to describe her explanation because it didn't make sense. She's just going on and on and on and on and on. And I didn't understand. Like, why didn't she just say what you said? Oh, I just was afraid of falling into the water.
Yeah.
Or like I saw what happened to Katie. Because I mean, poor Katie talked about how the last time she was on the challenge, she fell really hard into the water and left with 2 black guys. And then this time, as she falls in, one of the pieces hits her in the mouth and her lips like bleeding. And who was it that was laughing at her? And she was so mad as she's swimming back and her lips just like bloody. I was like, oh, poor thing. That sucks.
It was so weird that Kendall didn't just like say I was scared.
Yeah.
Then she like dissembles and just like rambles on, and everyone's like, okay, we're voting for you, Kendall.
Yeah, it was so odd. So odd. But the oddest thing.
It gets stranger, Sheldon.
Yeah, I was going to say it was odd, but I don't know if it was as odd as what happens next. So Trishelle and Katie, right? Get back to the house, and Trishelle is mad because Derek comes to tell her that she's going in against Kendall. And Trishelle's like, oh, really? Like, I didn't know that. Nobody came to tell me. Like, where's Katie? I thought Katie would have come and told me that because she's my best friend. And, you know, how come you're the one telling me? Where's Katie? And then they show Katie. She's downstairs getting food. And then all of a sudden, Katie comes upstairs.
She's making a plate. What's the problem with that?
Can't get mad at someone for making a plate. Can't do it. Can't get mad at someone for that, right? So then she comes upstairs, and then now there's a group discussion, and Trishelle is just mad that Katie didn't tell her first, as soon as she got back to the house, who she'd be going against. Let's stop here for a sec, and I'll ask you, does Trishelle have a point?
No, not at all. Not even a little. Because here's the thing. When she and her crew were having their conversations about who she might want, she suggested Kendall, and then she sort of backed away from it because there was some debate. So if you're Katie, you come back from the nominations, and you're like, geez, I'm hungry. I'm going to make myself a plate. And you wouldn't have any sense of urgency telling Trishelle because it's good news. It's what Trishelle ultimately wanted. So, like, it's not like oh, shit, you need to know this. You have to prepare. Like, you got fucked on this sort of thing. It's hey, no big deal. You got what you wanted. You got who you think the easy out is. Here, right? Like, I brought you, like, a cupcake from... Like, it's... Like, you wouldn't have a sense of urgency. Yeah. And, like, it was funny when Derek told Trishelle the news, and Trishelle, like, was like, why isn't Katie telling me? You could see Derek's face just be like, oh no. Because he knows who's involved. He knows like what he's dealing with. And you could just see it in his face where he's like, we're nobody's sleeping tonight. Like this is bad.
And then, but that weird cut to them just like yelling at each other in the middle of the night. And it's like, clearly they're talking about something else, right? Clearly there are deeper issues here with the two of them. And this isn't about, you didn't tell me about Kendall. They have like long standing issues that they probably have never sorted out. And they finally had the opportunity to kind of discuss something. And then it all just came out at that point, right?
Yeah, I think that's well, Katie suggested in one of the confessionals that this is sort of how Trishelle behaves, that when she's stressed out, she misdirects her anger.
Mhm.
And I think that's certainly a factor.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
will say, I thought Katie came off well here. Like she was pretty like even keeled, at least at first.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree
Right?
with that.
Because again, like I think at one point Katie says to Trishelle, like, "What should I have done differently?" Which is a very fair question. Like, what's
Yeah.
the expectation here? Like, what specifically? What did I do wrong?
Mhm.
And meanwhile, Trishelle's like, "We're no longer friends." Like, it was very 0 to 100.
It was. It was hilarious. It was hilarious. I found it funny, and it was just par for the course because if you're familiar with Trishelle's work on these shows, she's not going to go out quietly, right? And
Yeah,
so Katie saying she's over it. Katie, I think at some point in this episode was like, I think we've just outgrown each other, which happens. I mean, you're
it
talking
for
about
sure
20
happens.
years, right? Of course that happens. So it makes sense.
20 years. They live in different parts of the country, I believe. I didn't have the sense they've seen each other
No, didn't
often.
seem like it at all. And also, Katie mentioned, she's like, I didn't want to come on this show and do this. Like, I know what you guys remember me as. I know
Yeah,
what I was like on the show, and I don't want to come on this show and do that again. Like, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, blah, blah. I have a different life now. And I respected that. I got that. I understood that. But you saw it kind of creep out because if there's one person who could get her going, it would be Trishelle. To the point where Katie even said that she wanted Nehemiah to use the lifesaver on her to settle it. I
yeah.
thought, whoa, okay, business is about to pick up, and I thought that would make things a little more exciting. But we still end up getting Trishelle versus Kendall. And who did you think would win this elimination?
Sorry, I just wanted to say one thing on the Katie Trishelle issue. It's I think that I like to think of relationships, whether they're romantic, sexual, platonic, whatever. They're like a collection of shared habits.
Mhm.
And what Katie was really struggling with here was breaking their old pattern
Yeah,
and being like, I'm not going to like fall into having a massive blow up fight. That's hard to do.
for
Like
sure.
they have a lot of history together, and it's hard not to fall back into that trap, which Trishelle clearly fell into. To get back to your question, though, for not so fast, I thought Trishelle was going to win.
Okay.
And my thinking was that this is a really physical, it's like the classic jungle gym. You have to loop around with rope
Mhm.
and then your opponent has to undo it. I thought that Trishelle would be better because she struck me as bigger and stronger. She'd be able to haul more rope faster. She would be able to reach higher, stuff like that.
Mhm.
And, I Kendall's earlier comments to Derek, I thought, oh, her heart's not going to be in this. Like she doesn't even know why she's here. Like what's her motivation? Whereas Trishelle would be motivated by spite and anger to come
Yeah.
after Katie. Who did you think was going to win?
I wasn't sure. I thought Trishelle was going to win, but the way that the episode was framed, I felt like Trishelle was going to lose because of, all the early Trishelle stuff we got, her and Anissa, her and Katie. Like
Mm-hmm.
once they got all that stuff out of the way, it was kind of like, okay, the Trishelle storyline could be done after this episode. So
Mm.
with that said, the producer in me was saying, oh, okay, she's going to lose. But the viewer in me was like, oh no, I think Trishelle could grab this. And no, it didn't work out that way. And I think Trishelle pointed to the fact that, she knew Kendall would have better endurance than she would, because Kendall seems to at least work out in some form, or at least do yoga, which gives you some form of physical activity. Whereas Trishelle referred to her physical activity as sitting by the pool. Did she say drinking mojitos, I think?
Yep.
So yeah, didn't go well for Trishelle. And yeah, Kendall.
So Kendall wins. Handily.
With help from Darrell.
Trishelle notes that Katie was not cheering for her, but everyone else was, except for Darrell, who was backing up longtime friend Kendall, because Darrell is a very loyal man. Mm-hmm. I also think this really goes to show how Not So Fast is, people say it's about stamina, but it's also about mental toughness.
For sure.
And Kendall really showed that. Like, I was impressed with Kendall here.
Same.
Which begs the question, Sheldon, who killed it for you this week?
I'm actually going to give it to Kendall.
Okay.
And it's kind of funny because it's almost the same reason as my MVP last episode, which was Yesella. And it's just expectations, right? Like, I didn't think that, Kendall didn't seem like her head was in the game, really. Like, when she's questioning, like, why am I even here? And you give an elimination like that, which is one of the things that we talk about all the time on this show, right? Where it's a physical challenge, but you're not going against anyone. So it kind of becomes more mental, like you just said. And so would this woman who is like super small, super scrawny, doesn't like appear like physically strong, is probably strong, but you know what I mean? It's like a different kind of strength. Would she be able to pull through and keep going to, drag this rope? Because I don't think people understand how difficult that is. Like, I don't know how much work people have done workouts with those ropes, but that's heavy. Like, that is hard to do. And Kendall kind of seemed, from like the little bit that I saw of her, which was at the start of this episode, right? Which was, she kind of just seemed like someone who was happy to be here type of thing. Right? Like, oh, yay, I'm going to enjoy the sun and, get to do yoga 3 times a day in the park and whatever, But instead, no, she came out, put in work, and won. So for that, Kendall, you killed it.
You mentioned expectations, which is why I'm going to say Katie killed it. Because she defied our expectations of her in terms of how she would handle the aggression from her longtime friend, Trishelle.
I like it.
And I think one of the interesting things that we're going to see as this season rolls on is how these people have changed or not changed. It seems like Trishelle did not change that much. But I'm curious to see, like, who's matured, who, like, knows how to, like, maybe take it down a notch, who knows how to confront their pasts, things like that. So, I mean, I know she didn't really do anything in terms of competitions. In fact, she did quite badly at the trivia. But it was cool to see that personal growth from Katie. And I'm curious to see, how she carries herself without Trishelle in the house. Because I think that'll be a big difference, right? Because there's one less familiar person. And now instead she'll be interacting with people that she might not know as well. Certainly some people she does know, like Mark and Darrell, but it could be a little different for her.
No, for sure. Totally agree.
Where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at Shell Alexander, on Instagram, Sheldon Alexander, and like and subscribe to the YouTube page, which is also Sheldon Alexander. And of course, remember to like and subscribe to the You Killed It podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and where were we? SoundCloud? Yeah. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends, because people might not know that this is going on, that we're doing this now, right? Like, we kind of talked about it, but not really during the season. And people might pop up and be like, wait a second, what episodes are this? So maybe, and I'm like, we're producing this as we're talking live on the pod. But I'm saying maybe in like the name of the first couple episodes, we should probably mention like what we're actually doing. That is like the Challenge All-Stars episode 1 recap or something. Because people will be like, wait, I thought the season ended already.
No problem. And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at jchidleyhill. And until next week, this was You Killed It.
You killed it.
On blast.